9 caretakers walked into the Redden house. Every one of them fled before sunset. But Jonetta Frey didn't run. She sat down, looked those boys in the eye, and said something they'd never heard before. In the town of Cypress Landing, people didn't whisper about haunted houses or highway ghosts. They whispered about the Redden boys. 6 years old, born just minutes apart, Paxton, Ivor, and Hollis Redden weren't the kind of kids you brought juice boxes to. They weren't cute. They weren't shy. They weren't misunderstood. They were chaos, contained only by the white-painted fence of their father's crumbling 2-story colonial on Dogwood Avenue. Their father, Wendell Redden, had once been known for owning half the farmland east of the county line. These days, folks said he mostly kept to himself, widowed, withdrawn, and working from somewhere nobody could quite point to. He wasn't a bad man. He just wasn't really there. What was there were those boys, and they were loud, fast, and frightening in a way that didn't feel like childhood anymore. People said the moment you stepped foot inside the Redden home, the air felt strange. Too quiet, like the walls had stories they weren't finished telling. 9 women had tried to care for the triplets in the span of 6 months. One had fled barefoot. Another was found by police crying at a Shell station, her shirt ripped and smeared with peanut butter. A retired school principal lasted 4 hours. The ex-Marine from Savannah made it till dinner, barely. They didn't just act out. They attacked people's patience, their sense of safety. It was like they were angry on a level they didn't know how to explain. And no one had figured out how to reach them. The Redden house had become a revolving door of professionals who walked in with confidence and walked out with trembling hands. There were theories, of course. The boys had watched their mother collapse in the backyard. It was sudden. No one talked about it in detail, only that Marta Redden had been watering her azaleas when her body just stopped moving. No sickness, no warning. Gone just like that. Some folks believed that kind of trauma left a mark on kids. Others whispered about discipline or the lack of it. But what nobody wanted to say out loud was the ugliest part, that maybe the boys weren't just wild. Maybe they were broken in a way no one could fix. The help wanted sign went back up on the board outside the Cypress Landing post office once again. This time, someone had scribbled underneath it, "If you've got life insurance, bring it." Most folks laughed, but no one touched that flyer, until she did. She walked up just past noon, her steps slow but steady. The heat of August hung heavy in the air, but she wasn't in a rush. She read the sign, pulled a pen from her purse, and wrote her name on the little tear-off sheet at the bottom. Jonetta Frey. Nobody recognized her. Some said she'd come in on the Greyhound from Bloomfield, Indiana. Others thought maybe she was staying with a cousin up near Larkspur Lake. She was hard to place, tall, dark-skinned, and carried herself like someone who had nothing to prove and nowhere to be but exactly where she was. The woman behind the counter at the post office asked, "You sure about that job?" Jonetta just smiled and replied, "I've seen worse." That same afternoon, she walked the mile to the Redden house, her shoes crunching against dry gravel as she passed neighbors pretending not to stare from behind curtains. The white fence loomed in front of her like a dare. She stood at the gate for a moment, not hesitant, not wide-eyed, just measuring. The front yard was empty except for a broken plastic scooter turned upside down and a trail of crushed cereal leading to the porch. The house was still, but the kind of still that made your stomach knot up, like something inside was waiting. She raised a hand, knocked twice, then she waited. The door opened, slow and stiff on its hinges. Behind it stood a man with tired eyes and a week-old beard. He looked her up and down like he was already expecting her to run. "You with an agency?" he asked. "No, sir," she said, her voice calm. "Just saw the posting." Wendell's eyes narrowed. "You got kids?" "I did," she answered. That word hung there. Did. He didn't ask more. He just stepped aside. "You can meet them, if you want to try." Jonetta walked in. The door closed behind her with a thud, but the silence inside the house didn't stay silent for long. The floor creaked beneath Jonetta's feet as she crossed the threshold. The air smelled like old paper, lemon cleaner, and something sour, maybe spilled juice gone ignored too long. There were boot prints dried in mud along the hallway, and the wallpaper peeled at the corners. One picture frame on the wall hung crooked. No one had bothered to fix it. Wendell motioned toward the living room, but he didn't follow. "They're in there," he muttered, then disappeared down the hall without another word. Janetta stepped into the room slowly, her eyes sweeping the space. The TV was on, but muted, stuck on some cartoon where characters ran in circles and fell off cliffs. One couch cushion had been slashed, foam poking out like a pulled tooth. A half-eaten apple sat on the floor, brown and sticky. The coffee table was covered in stickers, permanent marker, and what looked like dried-up yogurt. And then she saw them. 3 boys. Same brown hair, same sharp cheekbones, but that's where the similarity ended. Paxton sat on top of the couch, shoeless, tearing apart a remote control with a butter knife. Ivor was under the table, hiding behind a pile of couch cushions, eyes watching her like a feral cat. Hollis leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, chewing the sleeve of his shirt. None of them said a word. Janetta gave them a moment, just watching. She didn't smile, didn't crouch down and do that sing-song voice people use when they want kids to like them. She stood still like a statue they couldn't figure out. Then she took 2 slow steps forward and said, "You must be the Redden boys." Silence. Paxton tossed the broken remote onto the floor and said, "You'll be gone before dinner." Hollis smirked, but didn't look away. Ivor licked his thumb and started rubbing it against the side of the table, eyes still on her. Janetta didn't flinch. She walked to the center of the room and sat down, not on a chair but on the floor, right in the middle of their mess. "I'm not here to scare you," she said, "and I'm not here to make you say please and thank you on day 1, but I am here to stay. Unless you want to talk to the wall, I suggest one of you tells me your favorite food." Again, nothing. She reached into her bag, pulled out a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper, and unwrapped it like she had all the time in the world. Ivor sniffed. "Is that homemade?" Janetta took a bite and said through a chew, "Sure is. I bake my bread too. Don't trust the kind that comes in plastic." Another pause. Paxton jumped down from the couch and stalked up to her, bare feet slapping the floor. "You bake bread? What are you, 90? Janetta smiled slightly. "No, just from a place where folks make things with their hands. You ever tried it?" He looked at her like she was made of glue and rust and something he didn't want to touch. "You're weird. I get that a lot." Hollis took a few steps closer, arms still crossed. "Where are you from?" "Indiana, Bloomfield, small town. You wouldn't like it. Nothing but cornfields, gossip, and 3 churches." "Why'd you come here?" "Because someone in your town needs me." The room got quiet again. Not stiff, just waiting. That's when Ivor stood up from under the table, eyes still glued to hers, and asked, "You got kids?" Janetta paused, just a second too long before answering. 2 boys, grown now. "Where are they?" Paxton asked. "One's in Florida, builds houses. The other's serving time." That stopped them. Hollis's eyebrows went up. Paxton squinted like he was trying to read a lie off her face. Ivor just sat back down. "Is that why you came here?" Hollis said, voice quiet for the first time. "No," she replied. "I came here because I still got something left to give." Then she stood up slowly, dusted off her slacks, and walked to the kitchen without waiting for permission. She opened the fridge, half empty, pulled out a few eggs, a bottle of milk, and a slice of bologna wrapped in plastic. She scanned the cabinets, found a bag of flour, and set everything on the counter. "I'm making pancakes. Y'all can sit there and glare at me if you want, but I'm still going to make enough for 4. No one moved. Then Paxton mumbled, "You forgot one. There's 5 of us." Janetta cracked an egg and said, "I make his plate last." But something shifted the moment she said that, just enough to keep the boys in the room. The pancakes sizzled on the old stovetop like they were daring someone to breathe too loud. Janetta moved slowly, deliberately. She didn't hum or talk to herself. She just cooked like it was the only thing that made sense in a house this loud with silence. She flipped one, slid it onto a plate, then another. The boys hadn't moved from the living room, but they were watching. Every one of them, waiting. Then came the sound, a thud, fast, sharp, deliberate. Something had hit the hallway wall, hard, another thud, louder. Janetta didn't pause. "That you, Paxton?" No answer, just the sound of someone running, the slam of a door. Then the water in the bathroom began to run, full blast. Ivor wandered to the kitchen doorway, one sock on, one foot bare. "He's flooding the sink. Did it last week. It got in the floorboards." Janetta wiped her hands. "Hollis, can you come here, baby?" He hesitated, but he came. She pointed to the skillet. Flip that next one when it bubbles in the middle, you see it? Hollis looked confused but nodded. Then she turned and walked to the hallway. Water was already spilling into the carpet. The bathroom door was open just enough to see Paxton standing on the toilet, both hands cranking the faucet like he was trying to wrench it free from the sink. "Paxton," she said calmly, "turn it off." He didn't even look at her. "Go home." She stepped inside, water soaking into her shoes. "You think this is going to scare me?" "No," he snapped, yanking the towel rack clean off the wall. "I just want you gone. Everyone leaves. Might as well make it fast." Janetta leaned against the doorframe. "That what happened to your mama?" He stopped. That one word cracked the wall. "I heard she dropped in the backyard," Jonetta said, her voice low. "Just folded right there in front of y'all. That true?" His chest rose. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He just looked at her like no grown-up had ever said those words out loud. "I bet that messed you up real good," she added. "I bet it still messes you up." Paxton looked down at the floor, at the water, at his bare feet. "Turn off the water," she said again. He reached for the knobs, turned them hard. Silence. Then he slumped to the tile and whispered. She was humming. "What?" "That day. She was watering the flowers and humming. I remember thinking it sounded like a TV song. Then she just..." He mimed a collapse. "Boom, gone. Ivor started screaming and Hollis ran and I just stood there." Janetta crouched beside him, her knees crackling. "You didn't do anything wrong, baby. But this here? Flooding your daddy's house? That ain't the way to get help. That's the way to rot in your own mess. I don't care." "You will." She put a hand gently on the top of his head, just left it there. "You miss her?" He didn't answer, but the way his jaw tightened was louder than a yes. Jonetta stood, offered her hand. "Come on, grab some towels." He didn't take her hand, but he followed her anyway. Back in the kitchen, Hollis had burned one pancake and was trying to scrape the black off with a butter knife. Ivor had climbed onto the counter and was pouring syrup directly into his mouth. Paxton entered the kitchen dripping wet. Janetta handed him a dish towel and said, "Go dry off and change. Your food's getting cold." He took the towel without a word, left. The sound of wet footsteps faded down the hall. Janetta turned to Hollis. "You cook much?" He shrugged. "I watched a video of a guy making prison noodles with a lighter. That count?" She cracked a smile. "You know what? I think I like you." Then she looked at Ivor. "You?" He shook his head. "I'm not funny like Hollis, or mean like Pax. You don't gotta be anything but Ivor." The kitchen fell quiet for a moment, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like something breathing again. Janetta plated the pancakes, set them down. No prayers, no speeches. They ate like wolves, fast, syrup everywhere, not a napkin in sight. When Wendell appeared in the doorway, he blinked like he was seeing something that didn't belong. "What the hell happened in here?" he asked, staring at the wet footprints and broken towel rack Janetta was now holding like a trophy. Janetta didn't flinch. First test, passed, barely. Wendell looked at the boys, all eating, not throwing food, not yelling, just eating. Then he walked away, like his body didn't know how to stay when things weren't on fire. But the second test was always harder, because it wasn't about chaos. It was about control. Janetta stayed late that day, though no one asked her to. Wendell didn't say much when she passed him in the hallway, just gave her a nod so faint it could have been a twitch. But the boys stuck close, not in a clingy way, more like they were trying to figure out whether she was real. After dinner, which she pulled together from a half box of elbow noodles, canned tomatoes, and shredded cheese, the triplets scattered into different corners of the house. It was how they did things, together but never close. They shared blood, a birthday, and a house, but not space, not anymore. She washed dishes by hand, no dishwasher, though the kitchen had a spot where one clearly used to be. Another gap in the story. As she wiped her hands and stepped into the hallway, her eye caught something on the stairs. A little stuffed rabbit, missing an ear, half its face burned or chewed, she couldn't tell. It was sitting upright like someone had placed it there on purpose. A warning, maybe, or a test. She picked it up gently and said aloud, "You don't look so scary to me." A voice from the top of the stairs replied, "That was hers." Janetta looked up. Hollis stood there barefoot, his oversized t-shirt hanging off one shoulder, hair sticking out like he'd just woken up from a bad nap. She carried it everywhere, he added. After she died, I tried to throw it out. Paxton put it back, every time. Jonetta looked down at the rabbit, one eye gone, stuffing visible. She had a name? She asked. Hollis nodded. Choo-choo. Jonetta sat on the bottom step, the rabbit still in her lap. Choo-choo, huh? That's different. She said it made her feel safe when Dad was yelling. That stopped Jonetta cold. Your dad? She said carefully. He wasn't mean, just loud. He'd slam cabinets, yell about money, or bills, or her not taking care of herself. Jonetta didn't speak right away. She placed Choo-choo beside her on the step, like it was listening too. You ever talk to anyone about all that? She asked. Hollis leaned against the wall and looked at the ceiling. They sent a lady once, with a badge and a folder. She gave us squishy toys and left. Jonetta sighed. Squishy toys don't fix grief. She said maybe we should write our feelings down. And did you? He looked down at her. I punched a hole in her car seat with a pen. She blinked, then smiled. That's a feeling, all right. He shrugged. Ivor says he can't remember what her voice sounded like. He's scared he's going to forget her face. Do you? I pretend I don't. She nodded slowly. Grief makes people strange. Makes houses strange, too. At that, Hollis tilted his head. What do you mean? I mean, sometimes you can walk through a house and know where someone used to stand. You can feel it in the air. It's like ghosts that don't knock things over. They just make everything heavy. He sat on the second step, not next to her, but close enough. Yeah, he whispered. It's like that. Jonetta looked up the staircase. Which room was hers? He pointed to the far door at the end of the hall. You go in there? No, Dad keeps it locked. I see. She stood and gently set the rabbit back where she found it. Then maybe you boys need a room of your own. One that doesn't feel like hers, or his, or some stranger's. He didn't answer, but she could see the thought working behind his eyes. Good night, Hollis. He surprised her by saying it back. She walked to the guest room Wendell had set up for her. Bare mattress, old quilt, a crooked lamp. The wallpaper peeled there too, like someone gave up halfway. But the sheets smelled clean. That was something. She lay awake a long time, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned with a soft wobble. The house creaked like it was trying to speak a language only grieving people understood. In the middle of the night, she heard footsteps outside her door. Not rushed, just slow, uncertain. She didn't call out. Just let whoever it was keep walking. Because some things need to learn how to walk toward healing in their own time. But healing doesn't come without resistance, and Paxton hadn't finished fighting. By the third morning, the house smelled like toast and tension. Jonetta was already in the kitchen, slicing bruised bananas into oatmeal and singing under her breath. Nothing cheerful, just a slow, worn-down gospel tune that held more weight than melody. Something her mother used to hum when times were tight and tempers were shorter. Paxton stood in the doorway, arms folded tight across his chest, like his bones itched. Why are you still here? Jonetta didn't look up. Because y'all keep waking up hungry. I didn't ask you to feed me. No, but your stomach did. She slid a bowl across the table. He didn't touch it. I'm not like them, he said flatly. She finally met his eyes. Like who? Ivor and Hollis. They still cry sometimes. I don't. I don't miss her. I don't care she's gone. That's so. He nodded hard. I even hated how she smelled. Jonetta stepped around the counter and pulled a chair beside him. I believe you, she said. Paxton blinked. You do? I believe you think you didn't love her. I believe it feels easier to be angry than it does to hurt. He looked away fast. Pain's a smart little thing, she continued. Sometimes it disguises itself so we don't recognize it. Like when your foot goes numb before it burns. He pushed the bowl away. You talk too much. And you hold too much, she shot back. Want to call it even? He didn't answer, but he didn't leave either. That afternoon, the war escalated. Jonetta asked all three boys to help her clean out the hallway closet. Nothing major, just old blankets, broken coat hangers, and whatever mystery was stuffed in the back. Ivor and Hollis groaned, but eventually helped. Paxton didn't. He stood off to the side, arms crossed, eyes hard. Janetta tried to ignore him until he grabbed a flashlight, turned it on, and began flickering it in her face like a strobe light. "I'm helping," he said flatly. Janetta didn't flinch. "You're being a pain." "You said to do something." "I said help. That ain't help." "I'm making it fun." She dropped an old umbrella in the donation box and turned to face him directly. "Why are you so mad at me?" He smirked. "Because you talk like you're some kind of saint. Like you're better than us." "I'm not better. I'm just older, and maybe a little more tired." "Then leave." "I've got nowhere else to go." He paused, then said it more cruelly. "Maybe that's your problem." The words hit sharp, but Jonetta held steady. She nodded. "Could be." That knocked him off balance. He stared at her like he couldn't believe she didn't argue back. "You think you're the only one who's broken, Paxton?" she said. "I buried a son I still visit in prison twice a year. I left a man who couldn't tell a bottle from his own blood. And I lost a sister who died thinking I hated her." He froze. "So if you're trying to scare me off, you better bring more than a flashlight and a bad attitude, 'cause I've already survived things you can't even imagine." Ivor and Hollis stood there, silent, boxes in hand, not sure what to do. And Paxton, for the first time since she met him, turned and walked out of the room without slamming anything. Later that night, the sound of a door creaking open woke her. She wasn't asleep, just lying there, thinking. Paxton stepped into her doorway, silhouetted in the glow from the hallway nightlight. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then quietly, "You want to see something?" Janetta sat up. "Is it illegal?" He shrugged. "Depends." She got up and followed him barefoot through the hallway, past the rabbit on the stairs, past the kitchen, into the garage. He pointed to a corner piled with old boxes and folded tarp. That's where she kept her garden gloves. Nobody's touched it, not even Dad. Jonetta squatted down, carefully moved a box aside. Underneath was a tin watering can, a faded photo album, and a crumpled hat that still smelled faintly of lavender and dirt. "Why'd you bring me here?" she asked gently. He shifted on his feet. "I don't know. Just thought maybe you wouldn't ruin it." She nodded once. "I won't." Then he said, "She hummed the same song you did." Jonetta's throat caught. She used to hum it when she cooked. It sounded sad, like she knew something bad was coming. Jonetta didn't say anything right away. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a clean handkerchief, folded it in half, set it on the workbench nearby. "If you want to keep anything from here," she said, "start with the memories that don't make you feel like you're gonna break." He looked down, then whispered, "She used to hum it before she got sick too." Jonetta let the silence hold them both for a while. But just when something starts to mend, something else always pulls at the seams. And the next morning, someone unexpected came knocking. The knock came at 9:07 the next morning. Too polite to be the mailman, too firm to be a neighbor borrowing sugar. Jonetta was folding laundry on the porch when she heard it, 3 deliberate raps on the front door. Wendell got there first. She watched from behind the screen as he opened it, barely masking his confusion. A woman stood outside, mid-30s, skin pale as paper, hair knotted in a loose bun like she'd driven with the windows down. Her blouse was wrinkled, and she held a brown leather folder tight against her chest. "Can I help you?" Wendell asked. "I'm looking for Jonetta Frey," she said. Jonetta stepped off the porch. "That's me." The woman's face tightened, like someone bracing for a slap that might not come. "I'm Callan Breyer. I'm with Children's Services. I just have a few follow-up questions." Wendell's shoulders stiffened. "What for?" Callan kept her voice calm. "There was a concern logged by a previous caretaker regarding instability in the home. We just like to check on any new hires working directly with minors." Jonetta looked her dead in the eye. "You didn't drive all the way to Cypress Landing just to ask about my resume. You already pulled my file." Callan shifted. "We're aware of your son's record, yes. And? It's standard to verify there's no ongoing custody claim or legal conflict that might raise risk." Jonetta folded her arms. "I'm not here to adopt anyone." Callan hesitated. "I'll still need a few minutes." Wendell opened the screen door. "You can use the back room." The boys were upstairs. Jonetta didn't want them hearing this. Not yet. She walked Callan to the guest room, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. Callan stayed standing. I'll be honest with you, Callan said. I read your background, the arrest, the charges, the testimony you gave in court. Janetta nodded. You want me to explain how a mother like me ends up with a son behind bars? I want to know if you're carrying unresolved anger that might show up in this home. Janetta took a breath. My youngest, Rull, was 17 when he got mixed up in a robbery with 3 older boys. One of them had a gun. Things went sideways. A man got hurt. Callan's pen hovered over her form, waiting. I testified in court because I was the one who called the police, Janetta continued. I didn't know what he'd done yet. I just knew he came home with blood on his shoes and couldn't stop shaking. I raised him better, but I couldn't lie for him. I wouldn't. And your older son? Lives in Tallahassee. He builds homes for other people. Still hasn't figured out how to build his own. Callan didn't write that down. She just nodded, professional and cold. You were suspended from your position at New Liberty Middle School 3 years ago for missing too many days during Ruel's trial. They didn't call it that officially, but I know what it was. Do you have any history of mental illness or medication for emotional regulation? No diagnosis, Janetta said flatly. Just grief, guilt, and the type of rage that cooks slow. But I manage. Callan looked her in the eye for the first time. You're not what I expected. I never am. Callan clicked her pen closed, slid the folder under her arm, and said, We'll be in touch. Janetta followed her to the door. Neither of them said goodbye. The moment the door shut, Wendell asked, That happen a lot? Only when someone's nervous about who I used to be. Wendell leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Why'd you tell her all that? You could have smoothed it over. Because smoothing it over is what got my son locked up. People kept pretending everything was fine. Wendell looked down at the floor, then back up at her. You think my kids are fine? She shook her head. I think they're wounded, and I think pretending they're not is why they bite. Wendell opened his mouth, then closed it again. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that, but he didn't push back. That night, Paxton asked her out of nowhere, Did you ever hit your kids? Janetta didn't lie. Once, just once. Ruel stole $20 from my purse when he was 15. I slapped him across the face. We both cried after. Paxton's face didn't change, but he asked, You regret it? I regret not asking why he needed it. He nodded slowly like he was filing the answer away for later. But some truths echo louder than you expect, and soon the boys would stop being the only ones asking questions. The next morning, the boys were out back throwing rocks at rusted soda cans lined up on a fence post. Ivor had surprisingly good aim. Hollis kept pretending he didn't care when he missed. Paxton wasn't playing. He was watching from the porch swing, arms crossed, that stare he used when his thoughts got too loud. Inside, Janetta scrubbed the kitchen counters with a stubborn focus, the kind of cleaning that wasn't about dirt. She'd seen the file on the table. Wendell hadn't even tried to hide it. It was Callan's. Her name printed in all caps on the first page. Her history, her losses, her son's sentencing transcript, printed like facts, could sum up a life. Wendell entered with his coffee and leaned against the fridge. She showed up with an attitude, he said. Or maybe she showed up with a checklist, Janetta replied. That's what they do. He sipped the coffee. You didn't deny anything. I don't hide things. Never saw the point. He looked at her, something quiet moving behind his eyes. I thought you'd want to make a clean slate here. She wrung out the sponge and set it aside. Clean slates are for people who've done nothing. Wendell sat down at the table. How do you walk around with all of it? The weight of it? Janetta poured herself some water and joined him. You don't walk around with it. You carry it until you find someone who knows how to hold a little of it for you. He didn't answer right away, just stared out the window, where the boys were now laughing about something Ivor had said. They were different before, Wendell murmured, back when Marta was alive. We were messy, but functional. Then she collapsed in the garden and everything got quiet in the wrong places. I tried to keep going. I didn't know how to cry in front of them. Crying wouldn't have broken them, Janetta said, but silence might. He looked down at his mug. You think I broke my kids? I think you stopped holding them when they needed to be heavy. That one landed. She could see it in his face. You ever talk to them about her? She asked. He shook his head. No, feels like I'd just make it worse. Too late for that. It's already worse. Now you've got boys who talk about their mother like she's a hazard sign. Wendell chuckled, short and bitter. You really don't hold back, do you? Not unless I'm paid to. They sat there, in that awkward middle place between honesty and shame. Jonetta stood to make more coffee, and he followed her with his eyes. You cook like her, he said suddenly. She raised an eyebrow. That a compliment or a warning? Both, he replied. Later that afternoon, something happened. Jonetta asked the boys to help clean the garage, just to sort boxes and sweep. Nothing fancy. Ivor and Hollis didn't complain. Paxton stayed glued to the steps. Wendell stepped in unexpectedly, held a broom, no words, just action. The boys froze. Paxton stared at his father like he was seeing a ghost. You sure you know how to use that? Jonetta asked, smirking. Wendell gave her a crooked smile. Pretty sure. Did my own sweeping back in '95. Jonetta nudged a box with her foot. Good year. Bad music. Wendell swept quietly, but the message was clear. He was trying. Jonetta caught Paxton watching him, jaw set like he didn't want to believe it. Like the sudden gesture might dissolve if he looked too hard. That night, after the house had gone quiet and the boys were tucked in, Wendell knocked once on Jonetta's door. She opened it halfway. You need something? She asked. He hesitated. I'm not good at this. Talking? No, owning things. She waited. I should have held them, he admitted. I should have held her too. Marta. She asked me to slow down before she passed, said I was missing the best parts. I told her we had time. Jonetta's voice softened. We all think that until we don't. He nodded once. You want anything? Tea? Wine? Whatever? She smiled, just a little. Tea sounds all right. They sat at the kitchen table again, two mismatched mugs between them, and for the first time, neither of them filled the silence with noise. But not all silence means peace, because something was still coming that would shake them all. The storm rolled in around 3 a.m. Not rain, not wind, but the kind of chaos that doesn't come from the sky. Jonetta sat upright before she even knew why. The air was thick, her heart racing for no reason her mind could name yet. Then came the crash. A door, hard, fast, then yelling. She threw off her blanket, bare feet already hitting the cold floor. By the time she hit the hallway, she saw Paxton. Shirtless, fists clenched, screaming. Hollis was standing just outside his room, holding his arm like something hurt. Ivor peeked out from behind the bathroom door, pale and stiff. Jonetta reached them just as Wendell stormed from his bedroom, wild-eyed and groggy. What the hell is going on? Paxton turned on him instantly. Don't act like you care. Excuse me? Wendell barked. You don't care. You never care. You just pretend until it's convenient, then disappear again. Hollis winced, clutching his elbow. Jonetta reached for him, gently peeling back the sleeve. A bruise was already forming, deep, dark, and ugly. Wendell noticed it too. Paxton, what did you do? I didn't mean to. He was yelling at me. He grabbed my backpack and I pushed him. It was a shove, Hollis whispered. But he didn't stop. Paxton backed away from everyone, face twisted, breathing fast. He was going through my stuff. It's mine. I didn't want him in it. Jonetta stepped forward, voice steady. Paxton, look at me. No, he shouted. You're not my mom. She didn't blink. I know I'm not. But right now, I'm the only one not screaming. So you can yell at me all you want, or you can calm down and let someone help you. Wendell tried to step in again, but Paxton raised his fists, not to swing, but to block, like he was expecting a hit. And that broke something in Jonetta. Wendell, she said, barely above a whisper, go back to your room. He froze. What? I've got this. Go. He looked ready to argue, but something in her tone, quiet, dangerous, unshakable, made him listen. He nodded once and stepped back. Jonetta turned to Paxton. You're not in trouble for being mad. You're not in trouble for yelling. You're in trouble for hurting your brother and refusing to own it. I didn't mean to. Intentions don't erase bruises. His shoulders slumped. I know it feels like everything's breaking all the time, she said, softer now. Like if you don't keep your fists up, something's going to hit you first. But baby, you're swinging at people who are just trying to love you. He looked up, tears sitting right at the edge of his eyes, refusing to fall. Jonetta took a step closer. You can be angry, but you don't get to make your anger someone else's wound. He stood there, chest heaving, until finally, he dropped to the floor. Sat right there in the middle of the hallway and cried like a child who finally couldn't hold it all in. And he was a child. Jonetta knelt beside him, not touching, not crowding, just there, until his breath steadied and his hands lowered and his head leaned, not against her shoulder, but close enough to feel safe again. Ivor came out from the bathroom and walked over to Hollis, whispering something only brothers would understand. Hollis nodded. No blame in his face, only exhaustion. Wendell stood in the kitchen doorway, arms limp at his sides. He looked like someone who'd just realized the fire had been burning longer than he ever wanted to admit. Later that morning, as light broke across the cracked blinds, Jonetta sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and swollen eyes. Wendell walked in, slow and unsure. You all right? No, he sat. What do you need? She let the question hang in the air. I need you to stop disappearing when it gets hard. I need you to stop being just a man with regrets and start being their father again. I'm trying. Then try louder. He didn't argue. He just stared at the grain of the table. I called my son last night, Jonetta added. Wendell looked up. Rule? He answered on the first ring. What'd you say? I told him I'd stopped running from who I used to be, and that I'd found 3 boys who reminded me what's still worth showing up for. Wendell looked at her. Something in his face had changed. Maybe not completely, but something. But healing doesn't end with tears. It continues with choices. And now, it was time for the boys to make one of their own. The morning air felt different. Not cleaner, not lighter, just clearer. Jonetta was already outside, pulling weeds from the small garden bed near the porch. It hadn't been touched in months, maybe longer. Dry roots tangled like wire, soil packed down like it had given up. Hollis came out first, hands in his hoodie pockets, and stood at the top step. You know that won't grow anything, right? She didn't look up. Not yet. Ivor joined next, holding a small spade he'd found in the garage. He didn't say anything, just knelt beside her and started digging. Paxton came last. He stood a few feet away, arms crossed, but the anger was gone from his face. You're not going to plant flowers, are you? Maybe, Jonetta said, wiping dirt off her palms. Or maybe something with roots deep enough to survive this house. He looked at the dirt, then at her, then he sat. No one spoke after that, not for a long time. They just worked, side by side, hands in the soil. And it wasn't about the garden. It never had been. Later that afternoon, Jonetta asked them to do something they hadn't done since Marta passed. Get cleaned up, she said, and meet me in the living room. Why? Ivor asked, his face wary. Because today, we're going to tell stories. Paxton made a face. What, like baby books and scrapbooks and stuff? Jonetta shook her head. Nope. We're going to talk about her, your mama. And if it makes you cry, good. If it makes you laugh, better. Wendell was already sitting in the armchair when they came in. Clean shirt, combed hair. He didn't say a word, just watched as his boys filed in one by one. Jonetta placed a dusty photo album on the coffee table. She opened it to a picture of Marta holding the boys when they were maybe 2, all of them covered in spaghetti sauce, wide grins smeared with red. That's the first one I want to talk about, she said, tapping the photo. What was dinner like in this house when she cooked? Ivor raised his hand like he was in school. She hated meatloaf, but she made it anyway. She said it was your dad's favorite. Wendell smiled, barely. Still is. Hollis leaned forward. She used to sing when she was tired, not when she was happy. Tired, like it helped her push through. Paxton added quietly, she used to read to us even when she was sick. She'd fall asleep in the middle of a chapter, and I'd pretend not to notice. One by one, the stories came out. Not in order, not always happy, but real. Jonetta watched them, not speaking much now, just letting the house fill with her again. Not in sadness, but in presence. Eventually, she asked, What's one thing you wish you'd said to her? Silence settled over the room. Then Ivor whispered, that I was scared. Hollis looked down. That I heard her crying in the laundry room and didn't do anything. Paxton didn't speak right away. Then finally, That I didn't mean it when I said I hated her. Jonetta nodded. I think she knew, but saying it out loud matters, still does. Wendell cleared his throat. I never said goodbye, he said quietly. Not really. I just let the doctors tell me it was over. I didn't even go back into the room after. The boys looked at him. Something passed between them, a knowing, a new understanding. Then Hollis got up, went to the kitchen, and came back holding the worn, stuffed rabbit, Choo Choo. He placed it on the table beside the album. She should have been here to see us better, he said. Jonetta put her hand over his. She sees you now. That night, nobody screamed. Nobody slammed doors. There was no stomping, no shoving, just quiet. Real quiet. The kind that settles deep, not like a hush, but like a breath finally exhaled. Paxton came to Jonetta's door around 9. He didn't say anything at first, just handed her something wrapped in a paper towel. Inside was a charm bracelet, cheap, scratched, the kind you buy at a gas station on Mother's Day. I found it in my sock drawer, he muttered. She wore it a lot. I thought it was stupid. Jonetta held it gently. It's not. You can keep it, he said, or plant it in that garden, I don't care. She looked up. I think you care more than you let on. He didn't respond, just turned and walked away quietly. But healing is only the beginning, because choosing to stay soft in a hard world takes more than memory. It takes daily work. And tomorrow was coming fast. The sun was high and mean the next day, beating down on the front porch like it was daring someone to sit still. Jonetta didn't care. She was on the swing, sipping sweet tea and watching the boys dig small holes in the garden bed. No one argued about where the rows should go. No one kicked dirt. It was quiet work. They'd chosen marigolds and tomatoes, half in memory, half in hope. Wendell stepped outside with a watering can, squinting against the light. You want me to handle this? Jonetta gave him a look. You sure you won't flood the yard? He grinned, an actual grin. No promises. He walked down the steps and joined them, clumsy but trying. And that was the thing. He was trying, not perfectly, not all at once, but something in him had shifted. The same way the boys weren't just bracing for the next explosion anymore. The same way Jonetta stopped watching the clock like she might need to pack up and run. At lunch, they all ate together at the kitchen table. No screens, no distractions. Ivor told a story about a kid at school who wore cowboy boots with gym shorts, and Hollis nearly choked from laughing. Paxton actually passed the butter without being asked. It wasn't a miracle. It was a meal. But it meant something. After the dishes were rinsed and drying, Wendell pulled Jonetta aside near the back door. I've been thinking, he said. You've done more for this house in 3 weeks than I've done in the last 3 years. That's not a competition I wanted to win, she replied gently. I know, he said, but I want to keep going. You know, keep building something. Something that doesn't fall apart the second someone walks out. Jonetta raised an eyebrow. What are you asking? I want to pay you double. Make this permanent. Not just as a nanny, as part of the family. She laughed once, dry and low. That's a big word, Wendell. I know. I don't say it often. But the boys... He paused. They ask about you even when you're in the next room. Jonetta looked out the window, saw Hollis adjusting the garden markers so they lined up just right. Ivor pulling weeds without being asked. Paxton sitting on the porch steps, sketching something on a notepad with a stub of pencil. They still have work to do, she said. We all do. And you're ready for that? Wendell didn't answer right away. Then, I'm not sure, but I want to be. That night, the boys insisted on movie night, not the usual loud shoot-'em-up stuff. They picked something they used to watch with Marta, an old animated film where nothing blew up and the characters just loved each other, clumsy and honest. Paxton sat beside her, head tilted just slightly in her direction, not resting on her shoulder, but near enough. You think my mom would have liked you? He asked during a quiet part of the film. Jonetta thought for a moment. Depends on the day, he smirked. I think she would have. You're not scared of us. I was, at first, but fear fades when you start listening. He nodded, then said, I still think about pushing Hollis. I still feel bad. That's good. That means you're not numb. I thought being tough meant not feeling anything. No, baby. Being tough means feeling it and choosing better next time. When the credits rolled, Ivor had fallen asleep on the carpet. Hollis was curled up in the corner with Choo-Choo tucked under his arm. Paxton was still wide awake. Wendell came in and turned off the TV. "Bedtime, gentlemen." No complaints, no yelling, just movement. As they shuffled down the hallway, Paxton turned back to Jonetta. "You staying tomorrow?" She smiled. "That's the plan." "Good." Wendell waited by the doorway. "You ever think you were done parenting?" "I thought I'd run out of chances." "Well," he said, "they needed someone who doesn't run." She didn't reply. She didn't have to. The next morning, she was already up before the boys, watering the garden. The marigolds weren't blooming yet, but the tomatoes had started to peek through, a small start, a real one. And inside that house, for the first time in a long while, the day started without yelling. Not perfect, but peaceful. Sometimes, the strongest love isn't loud. It's patient. It's steady. It's the kind that stays, even when everything else runs. If this story moved you, even a little, subscribe for more stories that remind us of what really matters. There's someone out there who needs to hear this today.